I was diagnosed, I believe, quite late in terms of how people are screened now. So for example, if two people got together now who had the trait and they were unaware, like my parents, that they had the trait, then and they produced a baby immediately after giving birth, the baby would be screened and they'd find out, they would be likely to find out straight away that the child was born with sickle cell. But for me, I was diagnosed in Nigeria. I was probably like around the same age as my son. So he's coming up to 2. I think I was probably maybe a little bit younger, but I was between the age of 1 and 2, like 1.5, let's say. So yes, I was in Nigeria. I was born in the UK, but my parents had decided that we were going to go back to Nigeria and settle back there and, live there for the rest of our lives. And then whilst we were there, I was diagnosed. I think I became really ill, severely jaundiced to the point where the yellowing was, it was staining the bed. That's how, I remember being told that's how jaundiced I was. I was in hospital receiving a lot of care. According to the stories, I think I was possibly knocking on death's door with how ill I had become. And my eyes were severely jaundiced. The whites of my eyes were really yellowed. I think I had the whole abdominal, spleen, belly situation going on. I believe it's referred to as like pigeon rib cage thing, where your stomach rib cage area sort of swells. So you kind of I think you tend to look a bit malnourished because you've got that mid part of your body which is just really pronounced. And yeah, so I was really ill for a little while. I remember that was when I had my first blood transfusion as well. I had that in Nigeria. And I think it was because of me having sickle cell and maybe the degree the severity at which I was ill at that point that led to the decision of, us coming back to the UK. Because although my parents were able to financially provide for the medical care that I needed, I'm not sure if that care was as advanced enough to support what would be frequent hospitalizations and trips to the doctors and all of that I would need to get me back to a place of, I was going to say normal health, but to get me well enough to be able to, like my body to become acclimatized, not only to Nigeria, but to this illness and at such a young age. Because I think with Nigeria, I don't know if it's changed that much, but I think that, of course, if you have the money, then you can access, the healthcare, good medical healthcare there. But I think it was just, I think there was still some uncertainties anyway about, if you think about like Nigeria and NEPA, like you can't be doing open heart surgery and then the light cuts out and then you have to go and put on the generators and all of that. Like I just like, so whatever their reasons were anyway, I'm being silly, but whatever their reasons were, they decided that it would probably be best for me to come back here and have the healthcare here. Probably just because of the consistency of the healthcare and the assurances that they would get from that alone. And maybe, I don't know this to be true, but maybe it's weird though, because I know for a long time in the UK and even certain parts, if I'm in certain parts of the UK, there's still a lack of understanding of sickle cell. So in my case, I would come back to London, and I guess the healthcare in London was up to par. I was diagnosed about 1.5. Now, I'm not sure why that is. And what, well, I know that I wasn't screened, so that's probably why I didn't have the the blood screening that they do now. So, and when I was born in the UK, I don't think they did the blood screening then in the UK when I was born. So that was probably why they didn't catch it. But I also think that it may have been because it doesn't present, sickle cell doesn't present straight away, like as in the symptoms. So if there's a blood test, it might be detected, but I think the symptoms may not necessarily present. I'm not sure. But I remember whilst being pregnant with my son, I was just doing a little bit of reading around, as you do, just to try and sort of get an understanding of what was happening with me sickle cell wise, what was going on in my body. And also what's happening with you in terms of carrying a child and growing a baby, and also what's happening to that little baby as well. But I stumbled across an article online. Now, I stumbled across a few. I'm not sure if this was the exact one, but it's an article about fetal hemoglobin in sickle cell anemia, a glass half full. That's the title of this particular one. And I remember reading something that suggested that when a child is born, a baby with sickle cell, that is, when that child is born, that the fetal blood that it carries, that it's had in the womb, is so strong, and it's still flowing around that baby's body for a little while before it completely breaks down and renews itself again. And because of that, you may not necessarily detect the sickle cell blood straight away. I will read you a bit of it. It is very complex. And let's see what we can detect, or if anyone can, derive anything from this, and if my understanding is correct. So I'll jump right in, but this is medical language, so bear with me. And I haven't warmed up my face, so there you go. Excuses already, Estella. Fetal hemoglobin can inhibit the deoxygenation-induced polymerization of sickle cell hemoglobin that drives the pathophysiology of sickle cell disease. So it can inhibit the deoxygenation-induced polymerization of sickle hemoglobin. So I think what that's saying is the fetal blood can stop or delay the deoxygenation, how the sickle blood is produced. I think that's what it's saying, something like that. And if we carry on, it says from 85% of total hemoglobin at birth, HbF normally falls to 1% at 1 year of age, with a reciprocal increase in adult hemoglobin. So I think what it's saying is that at birth, you have got sort of 85% of that fetal blood flowing through your veins. A person with I think this applies to everybody, whether you have sickle cell or not. I think what it's saying is that when a person is born, you are born with 85% of that fetal blood, right? And then it falls to about 1% by the age of 1, right? By the time you're 1 year old. And it goes to, and it reciprocates, right, or reciprocal increase in adult hemoglobin. And I notice here that when it gave the abbreviation of adult hemoglobin, it said HbA. So HbA is everybody's normal blood, right? Your blood, right? So whatever your blood type is, whatever blood conditions you may have, or just your sort of general blood type and blood group, are by the age of 1, I think that's when you have those full pints of blood running through your veins. So I believe that's what that part of this article is saying. I'm not a scientist. I am not a hematologist by no means. My parents did want me to study medicine and become a doctor, but I chose to be an actor. Well, it depends if you see it like that. I don't see it like that. I think my parents still secretly see it like that, but they just pretend that they're proud of me. Anyway, that's another story. So I think that's why I may have not presented any symptoms, and I think that's why I was diagnosed, quite late, a year and a half. There may have been something that triggered a major sickle cell crisis, or it may have just been the blood that was running through my veins had worn itself out and replenished itself with sickle blood, and it just hit me all at once. And I guess because my parents didn't even know, then they probably weren't equipped and ready to deal with, what was going on. They didn't know what was going on. So that's probably why I became severely ill to the point of needing hospitalization and needing a transfusion and being really jaundiced and all of that. Had they known, they would have probably been able to they probably would have noticed some of the symptoms and tackle them straight on. They would have noticed the swelling in my hands and feet. They would have probably noticed my protruding midriff. They probably would have noticed the tiredness or shortness of breath. They would have just noticed, may have been just more aware of, little signals that you could just take for granted in a baby. For example, swelling in hands and feet. Well, babies tend to be quite chubby around that. Well, some babies tend to be quite chubby around that stage. So, and they have like big, cute bellies. So it would be easy to miss, I guess. Yeah, so that's when I was diagnosed. And then I came back to the UK and then received consistent treatment and care from then on. And then I guess things were, smooth sailing. Well, I say smooth sailing, but what I mean is that I don't think I was knocking at death's door in the way that I've never sort of had that kind of experience with sickle cell since then. I've had really bad pain crisis. And it's interesting because I remember one of the worst was when I was about 16 and I had chicken pox. And then after getting over that, so I had that, I remember I was off school for about 2-3 weeks with chicken pox. And then after getting over that, oh my God, I had one of the worst pain. And that was the first time that I can remember that an ambulance had to be called to my home. Because I could not, when some of the symptoms are painful, pain episodes or known as pain crises. And I would describe them at that point as being, it felt like, not even at that point, when I was younger, when I would have, a crisis, it would feel like knives and daggers and pins and all of these things being hammered into your body all at once, while at the same time you felt like it would feel like you had a weight, like a heavy weight on your chest as well. So it was difficult to breathe and you were in crippling pain. So I remember I wouldn't even be able to, I